How is the role of the CTO changing in 2025 and beyond? AI is here, it's disruptive. A lot of companies have to think about how they're building technology. And you know what? That's the job of the CTO. And of course, they've got to be thinking about product. And that's what we always focus here on Product Driven. Tune in to this great episode about the future of the CTO. To survive and thrive, you must adopt a product-driven mindset. And we're back for another episode of Product Driven. This is Matt Watson, joined today with Adelina Chalmers, who is an amazing CTO coach on LinkedIn. If you don't follow her on LinkedIn, she puts out amazing content, has worked with, I think she says hundreds, maybe thousands of CTOs and other engineering leaders as a coach. And today we're going to talk about the future of the CTO role and how that's changing in 2025, thanks to AI, a crappy economy, all the different things. Adelina, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me again, Matt. It's really lovely seeing you.
So, how do you see this role changing? You just wrote a great newsletter about this, and you're the expert. People come to you. How is this changing?
Yeah, so I'd say traditionally the CTO role, has been, I think a word you used recently, an order taker. They to my mind, to be honest, a lot of CTOs are seen as the leader of an internal software house. That's what I mean, I think, what you mean by order taker. And with the emergence of disruptive technologies that are not just disrupting technology, but also disrupting markets and disrupting the way industries will do things going forward, like AI, means that the CTO role will have to become more and more an executive role rather than a order taker. Because if they carry on being an order taker or a software house leader that's told by the business what to do, that business will fall behind. And I'm happy to expand.
It depends a lot on the type of company, right? Like if you're a SaaS company,
yeah,
and your technology is your product, your CTO should have been more strategic and forward thinking anyways. But you probably work with a lot of CTOs that are not necessarily software companies, right? They're other types of business. And in those companies, the CTO could be looking at all types of technology, including like what kind of accounting system do we use, or CRM or ERP. Like they might be looking at a lot of different things and how they impact the business, right? And what you're saying is, especially for those people and those kinds of businesses, they have to really be looking at how AI could be disrupting all sorts of parts of their business, or helping them rethink about, like if they're a shipping and logistics company, they're like, okay, how do we use AI all of a sudden to do shipping and logistics in a totally different way that we never thought of before?
I think you're right that those companies are the ones that benefit the most from having a more executive and proactive, frankly, business strategy designer in their CTO.
Yeah.
But I'm also I've seen CTOs in companies whose entire product, the SaaS platform or whatever that might be, the fintech product, whatever it is, their CTOs are still often taking orders from the rest of the business, from sales in particular sometimes. And I'm saying that those companies are also in danger. But even the companies whose CTO has been more kind of seen as an executive and proactively helps create the product, those CTOs not only, and this is my angle, from 2025 onwards, those type of CTOs, not only will they be proactively creating a product for that company and technology, obviously, but they will also have to proactively look out into the market and be vigilant of how emerging technologies are going to impact their company in the next 2 to 3, maybe 5 years, depending on their industry type. That's what I'm saying.
Their product is more at risk of being, competition and displaced, obsolete.
Yeah.
All of those things. I think you bring up another interesting point that somebody mentioned on LinkedIn recently. I thought was a great conversation that fits with this. He's like, I'm the CTO. I show up to executive meetings. I show up to board meetings, and I want to talk about the technical debt that we have and our back-end tech stack and whatever. And he's like, literally nobody cares. And it's like, why would you show up to executive meetings and talk about that stuff? Why aren't you talking about product product strategy, collaborating with the rest of the company, talking about the roadmap and what we're building, strategic things, right? Not being the chief technologist, not being a technologist at the meeting that nobody cares about, like how the code is written and what, like nobody cares. They care about the product and how it's going to impact the business. And that goes along with the same thing you're talking about, right?
100%. The example you've given me just now, and I would love a link to that post, by the way, but the example you've given just now showcases precisely why CTOs are not taken seriously in the C-suite and in the boardroom. Why CTOs are order takers, not business strategic designers,
It's a
code
lead
designers.
software developer.
Sorry?
Yeah, they're thinking like the lead software developer,
Yeah,
and not at a strategic level.
Without wanting to sound blunt and rude, they are a lead engineer with a glorified CTO job title.
Yep,
And
they're a team lead probably.
they're team lead, yeah. And it's just, and that's fine, right? When it's a small business, that's not a problem. When the business gets 20, 30, 50, 100, 300 engineers, that's when the person's limited mindset, engineer / individual contributor / staff mindset, starts to really show how they are putting the brakes on the business while the business is trying to take off. And that is when they're causing trouble.
When you hear this a lot, that it's like every company is a technology company or a software company now. And I mean, you're in the UK, but maybe you're aware of like Walmart here, but think about like a company like Walmart, who's one of our largest retail companies. Mm-hmm. Are they a software company? Like, so much of what they do, the logistics, the pricing, e-commerce, all these things is very, very heavily based on technology, right? And so to not have a CTO that was extremely strategic with technology would be a major problem. Now, obviously, they're a giant company, but it's the same example that applies to every company, right? Like, technology should be critical to everything that you do. I recorded a podcast actually just for this with one of our product managers at Fullscale, and he was giving an example of like a logistics company in the Philippines. Had been in business for 20 years, very boring logistics company, and they decided to create a mobile app so their customers could order shipping and do different things. But they did such a terrible job at the mobile app that it like ruined their like whole, not their whole business, but their whole like customer experience was so terrible. It like ruined part of their brand, right? And it's another great example of like whoever is leading the technology part of this isn't thinking about strategically at a high enough level, and they're not doing product management at a high enough level to think about like what could happen if we do a good job or a bad job at this at a high enough level.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, this is the thing that being a CTO technologist is very, very tricky to make yourself look like an executive, because you don't act like an executive if you purely think about technology. Technology for the sake of technology is worthless. What's actually valuable is technology when it works well and interacts well with the other departments to bring value to a customer or to a value chain somewhere. And when someone thinks just about technology, they don't do that. Sorry.
And so in the other episode I recorded, we were talking about project managers versus product managers.
Yeah.
And it's the same sort of exact analogy with the CTOs. It can't be about output. It's not about output. Same thing with a CTO or a project manager. You cannot be focused on just output. And a lot of us are very focused on that because that's what we do. Like, oh, we built this thing, we shipped it, we committed the code, whatever. And they're just focused on output for the sakes of output, but not focused on outcomes.
Yeah.
And if you're the CTO, you have to be focused on outcomes, not output.
Yes, 100%. I mean, this is the thing as well. From my awareness of product, which is not as extensive as kind of the CTO inside of it, I would say that there's a lot of people go into product management, not project management, with not much experience. You know, in startups in particular as well, often people are made all of a sudden VP of product or product manager, and yesterday they were doing marketing or operations or admin even. I'm baffled by this because it means they completely undermine and misunderstand the value that product brings to the business. I mean, technology without the link to the customer, the product, again, building technology for technology's sake.
Well, but I think in companies, they have to figure out how to get the voice of the customer and help drive product strategy, right? And sometimes it can be good to take somebody that worked in customer service or some other part of the company that has that voice, that understands what we're doing, why we're doing it, how we're doing it, right? And then can help bridge that gap to the engineering team. But yeah, product is definitely a different discipline to do it the right way. And that would only work if they had like a VP of product or somebody at a higher level that can help coach those lower level product managers to understand how to do product at a higher level. But as part of product driven and this channel, and I am working on writing a book about a lot of this kind of stuff. It's all about this. It's like, how do we get all of the engineering team to focus on why are we building this, understanding the outcome of the work, and having the voice of the customer. And more importantly than probably anything, and I'd love to get your take on this, is empathy for the user. Like empathy for the user, and not empathy for like your code. Like the users don't care about your code, let's be honest. And as a developer, you've got to be focused on empathy for the user. And the same thing with the CTO who's in the boardroom, right? It's empathy for like the business. What are we building? Why are we building it? The strategy. It's not just about output of delivery and code and shipping features. It's got to be focused on the outcomes and empathy for everybody else in the company.
Yeah, I think you make a very important point there, Matt. And empathy for the customer is really important aspect of being a CTPO, I suppose. I mean, if you sometimes you have a separate product person, that's another conversation for another day, if you like. And sometimes you encompass both. But the bottom line is that absolutely, if you don't understand, and if you don't have good UX skills yourselves, a lot of technologists are not necessarily good at UX, and that's fine. That's a separate thing. However, if you're the CTO, you need to be able to look at your gaps in skill set and go, UX is not my forte. Who in the team is good at UX, or who could I hire, or who could I promote, who could I put in charge of UX to make sure that customer experience is actually reflected in the features and products we're building, rather than just, let's churn out features and hope for the best.
Well, we talked about this before we started recording. I feel like there's 3 types of engineering leaders. And in any company, you need somebody that's in charge of strategy, which a lot of times is the CTO or should be the CTO. You have somebody who's really good at managing people and process, which a lot of times that could be like a VP of engineering. And then you need somebody who owns the technical part of it, like the architecture, the most complicated technical bits of whatever it is that you're doing. And a lot of companies, especially bigger companies, these are 3 different people, right? Like your chief architect, lead architects own the technology part of it. The CTO is more strategic at a higher level. They're not in the weeds of a lot of this stuff. And I feel like most engineering managers have to realize where they fit in that triangle. Are they really good at strategy, people and process, or technical? And I feel like very, very few people are good at all 3. I think there are definitely a lot of people that are probably good at 2 of the 3. Maybe some of us are really only good at 1 of the 3. And I would be the first one to admit that I'm really good at strategy and I'm really good at the technical part of it. I don't really enjoy the people and process part of it. And I wrote a blog once about how I could never be a VP of engineering. Like, I would hate that role. I would not want that role. And of course the job titles are different in every company, but I'm much more of a visionary, big thinker, strategy kind of person, not like managing people all day. And I don't enjoy that part of it. But I think it's really important that other engineering leaders understand these 3 different pieces, but even more importantly, understand it's all in service to product. Like, there is a bigger sort of triangle that you're a part of that is the product team, and the product team is also worried about strategy, execution, and delivery, which is really the engineering team. And then like usage and marketing of the product is kind of the third wheel on that one. But I think engineering leaders have to understand that what they're good at, what they're not good at, and everything they do is really subservient to the product team. Like, especially if you work at a SaaS company, you're there to build a product. That's what you do.
100%. Yeah. And I agree with you. Like you say, CTOs that can be both strategists, technologists, and people leaders are unicorns, and I think they are quite rare. Someone who is excellent at all three,
And has
however,
time to do all three. That's the other thing. You have to have time to do it.
but in my view, when the company grows bigger, and all three become massive, right? All those three things become huge. The CTO then gets to decide and go, well, I mean, most CTOs, to be honest, they hire a VP of engineering to deliver the operations, to ensure that engineering is delivered to standard, to quality, on time. There is an excellence, there's processes in place, all of that.
Yeah.
So I would say a CTO who claims does all three fully is lying to themselves and others. However, the CTO should hire a VP of engineering with whom they proactively work to co-create the tech strategy, because then you have to create a strategy that actually works in reality. You need input from the operations side of engineering to make sure that you actually have the staff power, the man and woman power, to deliver what you're thinking, rather than just blue sky thinking, oh yes, because then it becomes just R&D. This is not, and I think the problem of a lot of CTOs is that they don't even realize that they're not doing the other key aspects of the job.
Right.
And they let them go, and they let the other people in the company down.
Well, that's why a lot of people come to you, right? They figure out, like, I'm stuck, I have a problem, maybe I don't understand the problem, maybe they're not self-aware, and these are the kinds of things you help them figure out, right?
Yeah, that's right. But I sadly discovered that often the CEO comes to me and says, can you help my CTO, or should I fire them? And the problem is that by the time the CEO comes to me, it's often too late. Not always, but it's often too late. And when the CTOs proactively come to me, which is my favorite kind of project, that's beautiful. Because then the CTO takes ownership, takes power, takes authority in front of the CEO and says, I'm good at my job, but I know I'm not brilliant. I think there are some gaps, and I'd like someone to help me with, and I've identified this person, and bam, bam, bam. And that's fabulous. But when the CTO has someone like me forced onto them by the CEO, things don't often go well.
Yeah, I can see that. That's like having a bad marriage, and all of a sudden you're like, I hired a therapist you have to go meet with. And you're like, oh, no, this is not.
We made you an appointment, and we want you to keep it.
You have a marriage counselor you have to go visit with, and you're like, oh, this is not good.
Yeah.
It's probably too late.
Yeah. So can I ask you, Matt, what helped you realize these three types? Because I have seen these patterns myself. But I think, when the VP of engineering, when operations of engineering is being delivered by a VP of engineering who reports to the CEO, that's kind of a red flag. That's what I'm saying, that the CTO, when I say the CTO, the job of the CTO is to ensure that consistency of delivery for engineering, it doesn't mean they're there setting up the processes, they're there, making the details of the roadmap and line managing all the engineering managers. I'm just saying that they appointed, and they were proactive in appointing someone who can do that on their behalf. However, they do take responsibility of ownership for the delivery of that.
I'm not sure when I kind of came to this conclusion about the three different types, but as I'm working on the book that I'm writing, it's very focused on product and teaching software engineers to have a product mindset, and product thinking is the theme of the book. But it started with really a lot of leadership problems. And I think actually probably what this came from was talking to our customers at full scale, because they'll come to me, that's where this came from. They come to me and they're like, Matt, we want to hire more software developers, but we've struggled, we've hired developers and it hasn't worked. And I'm like, whoa. That's because you've got to have these three different kinds of engineering before you can grow and scale the team.
Yeah.
You can't grow and scale an engineering team if you don't have this leadership in place. I think that's actually where I probably came to this conclusion and started to think about it that way and talk to our customers about it. Because I'm like, hey, I can help you hire great software developers through full scale, but it's going to fail if you don't have the right people and process manager in place, you don't have the right strategy in place, and you don't have somebody to drive like architecture and the lead like technical decisions. Like, or we have to figure out how to help you do these things. But ideally, you should have all these capabilities in house. I think that's where it came from.
Coming back to the original statement you made at the beginning of this episode about how the CTO role will change going forward, and not just because of AI, but also the marketplace. Feeding back to your three types of CTO, the technologist, the strategist, and the people process person. I've noticed a shift in the marketplace with regards to what CEOs expect of CTOs. And you will find, that not only that you have this constant confusion between CTO and VP of engineering, which quite frankly, VP of engineering usually is that people process person you were talking about, right? And I think you wrote the blog post about that, about why you're hiring someone like that, which is excellent. But I think in a lot of jobs these days as well, being a technologist on its own is not enough. Also, frankly, in a lot of companies now, being a people and process person on its own is not enough either in the tough marketplace. So even for a VP of engineering, they expect you to be a bit of a strategist and a bit of a technologist, even if what they need is someone to do engineering operations, right? Engineering delivery.
Everybody needs to have ownership at a different level. And that's one of the big things I'm going to be focused on in my book, and we focus on with the team at Full Scale, is like, you've got to have ownership of whatever it is that you're doing. Even if it's like, hey, I own this like one part of the code, or I own this feature, or I own this module, or this product, or whatever, right? It's about having ownership and being able to delegate and trust somebody to own whatever it is they do. Even if they're, to your point, like, hey, they're VP of engineering, but I trust them and they have ownership in, this part of the business. They can't just be an order taker. Back to what we talked about earlier. They cannot be just an order taker, even all the way down to the engineers themselves. Because if you're just an order taker in 2025, that's what AI is. Like, I could tell AI to potentially do that, right? And it would just do it. And there are way too many software engineers in this world that rely on perfectly written requirements to do their job. And you could just give those perfectly written requirements to AI in 2025, and it is probably going to output like 80% of that code, probably, right? And that is why I started down this path of product driven and writing the book and doing all the internal training at Full Scale. So we have over 250 software developers. It's like, all of you guys have to level up. Like, we need product engineers, not software engineers. Everybody has to level up and be thinking more about product, having more ownership, asking the right questions, being more involved in like, why are we building what we're building? And this relates all the way back to engineering leadership. It's at every level. People cannot be order takers. Like, they've got to bring solutions and figure out how to solve business problems.
Yeah.
Maybe in the old days, like the CTO all the way down, were more order takers, but that is not going to be the case going forward with AI, or you would just ask AI to like do the whole job probably.
Well, I'm really glad to hear you are doing this and you are kind of launching this kind of training, because so some years ago I interviewed one of my lovely mentors, Jamie Urquhart, who's a co-founder of ARM. He was the original COO of ARM, I believe. And Jamie said that, in the early days at ARM, and as even when ARM grew, they were trying this as much as possible. They would include engineers in customer meetings.
Yeah.
The engineers that were down on the floor, doing stuff on the ground floor, doing stuff, because if they spoke to the customer and had the chance to ask the customer questions, or they understood how's the customer using. No, this is not an R&D project. This is not a research project. This is a real world application. This is a real person who's planning to use what you are building. But when you get engineers to build stuff in isolation, of course, they're just ticking boxes. They're doing outputs, like you call it.
Yeah, they're losing the empathy and understanding the why of the user, right? Like they're lost in isolation. And actually, the first chapter of my book is going to be about how engineering is not the problem in most companies. Like, everybody blames engineering for all the problems, but it's actually the way they work with engineering and the way that engineering works with everybody else, right? If you're that disconnected, no wonder you're not getting a lot done. You're not working on the right things. You're behind schedule. You're all these things because you're totally out of touch with like what we're building and why. Yeah. And to me, it's like a, business integration sort of culture problem in a lot of companies. And I would assume you see this a lot with the CTOs that you coach.
Yeah, I mean, what I find fascinating is, when you have a C-level meeting and you have the CTO talking about, let's say, the roadmap, if they're actually a strategic CTO who thinks about where things are going. But let's say the CTO talks about the roadmap and what engineering will be doing in the next few months. And then you get product or marketing talking or sales talking about completely different things in the next 6 months. And you're going, how on earth are you actually delivering anything? Because this is not aligned. You haven't spoken to each other.
Yeah. That's why I said that's why I said earlier, it's all in subservice of product. Like engineering is in service of product. And if people don't understand that, they have exactly the problem you just described. Like the product team and the sales team are making promises they can't deliver. And then the engineering team has their own sort of goals and they're running in their own different direction. That can't be the case. Like the CTO has to solve these problems, or the product executive team, somebody has to get these two aligned. And I think it's too much of a problem in too many companies.
Well, 100%. And I actually talk about this in my lecture, at Oxford University, I guess lecture on the program of AI for business. And one of the things I talk about in my lecture there is the fact that engineering metrics and other company metrics, to be honest, they are not done, they're not built in a way, they're not created in a way that helps the company departments work together. They all have internal metrics. Engineering has DORA metrics and life cycles and all the rest of it. And then you have a customer success, you have customer acquisition, customer retention, customer acquisition costs, etc. But actually, what matters to the business is the outcome of the merger of those 2 or 3, 4 things.
This is a chapter of my book.
Oh, really? Yeah, one CEO, in my audience at the Oxford lecture said to me, I don't care about your life cycle. I care about how is this helping us with the top and
those
bottom
are metrics
line.
of output, not outcomes.
That's right, exactly. And this is the thing that I think that there should be, and when they aren't, things are not going well, but they should be cross-departmental metrics. And I give examples of those. So I give examples of how engineering metrics can become different metrics that can help very easily a CTO build a business case. But the other thing that CTOs, sorry, go on.
To me, I feel like the values that matter the most are understanding the users, right? Like it's usage and the approval, happiness of the users. Like, are the users happy? And the usage of the product sort of drives everything. If we get more usage and happier customers, it drives revenue, it drives sales, it drives customer satisfaction. And if the software engineering team was also focused on happy users and empathy for the users, like all of it aligns to me. I don't care about how many lines of code you committed. Like nobody cares. That doesn't matter. That doesn't affect the rest of the business, right? But if everybody aligns to the users and the users being happy and using the product, I feel like everything else aligns. I'd love to get your opinion on that.
Yes, with a caveat that those users have to also be profitable users.
Yes.
Right? So that's my only caveat to that. So 100% working back from the user, but also we have to work back from a profitable user with being sold a profitable product. One CEO said to me that when he was an engineer in a company, he was working, very hard on this piece of code, on this particular type of product. And he thought, wow, I'm so great. I'm doing all this amazing stuff. And then the CEO showed his entire team that the product they'd be working on made zero money for the business.
Yeah.
And then they were all like, oh. So basically they were a cost center to that company. Yeah. They were not a revenue or value center.
Yeah, and the product manager, the product team can't allow that to happen, right? They've got to bridge that gap and make sure everybody understands.
Yeah, and that's the thing. So when he started his own company, then he literally made sure that the engineers were always aware of working back from the customer.
Well, I think this has been a great conversation today about the types of engineering and the we need engineering to be more strategic. Technology, CTOs need to be more strategic, which we've always known, but I think AI, and the risk of really having major disruption in a lot of industries, a lot of stuff will continues to make this a bigger deal. I'm curious if you have any other final thoughts about engineering leadership and CTOs in 2025 and how that is changing, besides the job market sucking.
Yeah. So, I mean, I would say if from a perspective of an employee, if you want to become a CTO who never applies for jobs ever again, you have to become a CTO that's not just very good at their technology, but understands the market that they've been working in and the industry they've been working in. And if you understand those two things in a tough market, combine that with the ability to lead some engineers and deliver stuff at scale, you still will find lots of jobs, even in a tough market.
I love this. You know why? Because what you just described was product and industry knowledge.
Yes.
Precisely. Yes. Product, baby. Product. That's the key. Product.
100%. And I think from 2025 onwards, the CTOs who have been order takers, unless they become proactive business strategists, i.e. you proactively inform and co-create with the CEO and the CFO and whoever else the business strategy, then you are not going to be an A-list CTO for sure.
Okay, but hold on. There's one more thing we got to talk about before we end this.
Okay.
Is that person in the future the CPO? Is it not the CTO? Like, are we going to see a shift of more product-focused executives actually running the engineering team?
I mean, I think a CTO without a CPO, it's almost half a person. It's almost half a job. Because how can you create technology if you don't understand what product you're creating? Mm-hmm. So the best CTOs that I've worked with are obsessed with
really good at product. Yeah.
Really good at product. They might not have the CPO, CPTO title. You know, they might not have P in the middle of their job title, but they are, you know, eating for breakfast, lunch, and dinner products. Yeah. And technology, they see technology as a tool to deliver said product. They don't see technology as the goal. Yeah. You know, there's a difference between using AI as a tool and using AI as a goal for the business, which is ridiculous.
Right. Yeah, it's a great analogy of, you can create all the code in the world, all the AI code in the world, but it doesn't drive strategy of why you built any of it.
What's the point?
How to make money from it or any of that.
That's right. If it doesn't add value, it doesn't add anything.
Well, I really appreciate having you on the show. Anybody out there who works any kind of engineering and engineering leadership should definitely follow you on LinkedIn, and you have a newsletter now on LinkedIn, and I know you have other resources out there, and very, very good person to follow. I love your content on a weekly basis, so I highly recommend it. Just search for your name on LinkedIn, Adelina Chalmers.
Oh, thank you so much, Matt. I also love, to be honest, you come up on LinkedIn with all these brilliant concepts. Like you just said now, you know, the strategist, the people person, the people process person, and the technologist. And you also, you know, came up once after a chat, I think you had someone about the chief tomorrow officer and the chief today officer.
Yeah.
So I love all the stuff you come up with as well, Matt. You're brilliant. So thanks for having me. Always a pleasure talking to you.
Well, thank you so much. And, you know, if you guys listening, watching this today appreciated it, please like, subscribe, all the things. Appreciate it. And we'll see you on the next episode of Product Driven. Thank you.
Thank you.